Today, we dive into the physical practice of yoga, asana. This is the third limb on the ladder to enlightenment, the journey of the 8 limbs of yoga. And we're going to be talking about what asana means to us, to different practitioners, how it's changed and evolved over time. Asana, the physical pose posture of yoga practice, is expressed in so many different ways in the yoga world, across the world, internationally. And it's pretty neat to think about how many different expressions of the physical practice are created through the time that you're a toddler or a young child to later years in your life. There are so many different ways you can practice asana, and it can be suited for your body. So today we're going to dive into that. I'm here with Christine. We are diving into this third limb of yoga.
So asana is, for a lot of people, kind of the gateway drug into the world of yoga. And for me personally, I was really just interested in the physical. And it took several years of just practicing the physical to be even interested into these more esoteric practices. So that's why it's most commonly known as, when you think of yoga, you think of someone doing a posture like downward dog or tree pose. But again, we're just at the third limb. So we covered the yamas and the niyamas before, which are really kind of the foundational aspects of yoga. And then now we land on asana. So it's actually not even the first priority, which is really fascinating because in our Western world, most people think of yoga, they think of the postures that we take, which we are kind of diving into today.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely the gateway drug, I think. Just for clarification, we have the 8-limbed path. We have the ladder, if you will, to enlightenment. Limb 1, limb 2, limb 3, and so on. And while it's probably going to benefit you if you start at the beginning, if you start with the practices of nonviolence and love and contentment, and set up your mind for a really positive practice, that will keep your body safe as you explore asana. But like Christine said, most of us, especially in the Western world, land on limb 3 first. And I think it's important to realize there's no right way to do things, especially when it comes to this, your life, being a human. There's so many different paths and expressions one can take. So someone who's called to the physical practice, who is mesmerized by advanced poses and wants to challenge their body's limits of strength and flexibility, that shouldn't be judged against someone who's maybe more spiritual or practicing meditation or practicing limb 1 and 2, right? Even though these different limbs are different, the fact that we're all being called to practice yoga, I believe, is really what matters the most.
Yes.
So it all really comes out in the wash. Like Christine just shared, she was called to the physical practice and she dove in, and it took some time before she felt really called to experiment or explore the philosophy or breath work and meditation or any other parts of the yoga practice that aren't so recognized readily across the world. So it's great that we have this physical practice because we are physical beings. We have our bodies, and we're sensory beings with all of our 5 senses, maybe 6 senses, with all of our 5 senses. That's how we live and experience the world, through what we see and hear and feel. So the fact that I think a lot of us are called to jump right into the third limb is totally natural and great.
Yeah, I think it's the most accessible too. And the beautiful thing about our studio at Black Swan is that our classes are very accessible. We get a lot of people who are the first time that come in, and then we have a lot of seasoned people that come in. And then the teachers have a lot of free autonomy to kind of create the structure that they want for their class. And so they might weave in some philosophy or some breath work or some meditation. So we're still having that ability to kind of like sprinkle and expose people to these other parts of the practice. And the beautiful thing is it's never forced. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. But if you're drawn to it or it speaks to you, then we're more than happy to explore it and have an offering for students to find out a little bit more.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So I'm excited that we're talking about asana, this third limb today, because I think it's going to be a great chance for us to explain more about Black Swan Yoga, what it is, what the philosophy is behind the community and the brand of Black Swan Yoga, and really what makes it successful and vibrant and inspiring to people is truly the fact that we don't have a specific right way, or we don't have a specific style of asana that we offer. In general, Black Swan Yoga teachers are people that are authentically inspired, have very different backgrounds, and are teaching from their hearts, are teaching from this place of personal inspiration where they have been called to a specific style of yoga. Even if on the outside, it all looks relatively similar. Our classes are vinyasa and hatha flow-based classes. Inside the class, that's where each teacher is able to express themselves a little bit differently based on what they're called to share. So Christine and I both come from similar but also different backgrounds, I think, when it comes to yoga asana. We've both explored more strict dogmatic practices that are very cut, very clear. This is the way that you practice, and this is essentially your daily habit or even a ritualistic, religious type of practice. And I've explored a couple different styles of yoga in that way, but then also on the totally opposite end where it's all about exploration and totally free and maybe, no guidelines or no order, if you will. So there's definitely this long spectrum of ways people can teach asana and experience it when you're a student. And I think the cool thing about Black Swan is that all of us as teachers come from different backgrounds, and we all have the same general message of empowerment and encouraging each person to listen to their bodies and their hearts and their callings. And from there, they can really get to know themselves a little bit more, connect with their bodies a bit more, and express poses in different ways. So if a teacher encourages you to practice something like Warrior Two, if you look around the room and at general in a Black Swan class and really everywhere in the world, I think people look different. Our bodies are different, and we all kind of have the same general skeleton, right? We stand upright for the most part. We have arms and legs. We have a head. We have organs. We have kind of the same makeup, but we're all very different. Comparing heights, sizes, physical makeups of the body. Male and female, hormone differences inside the body, energy levels, health, age, all these crazy things.
And that's the beautiful thing, because in Black Swan, it's not just one particular body type that's coming in. We get all of these differences that are coming into the studio. And that's what makes it so beautiful, is even though there's this power of we're all moving and breathing together, everyone has this unique body makeup of what they look like. And that doesn't really matter. Of course, we want to look at alignment and how the body is organized. But at the same time, what Madeline was talking about is really encouraging students to really tune in and start listening to their bodies and start thinking about, okay, we know asana are these postures that we take and are organized, and they'll move from pose to pose. But I also think about why is yoga right now just booming in the industry, and it just keeps growing. And I think about, okay, most studios, whether it's Black Swan or anywhere else, the main thing that people are being exposed to is asana. And so, it's well, why asana? Why does it get such precedence over everything else? And yes, it's because it's physical, but I think there's something very unique and different than any other movement modality in a book called Light on Yoga. The author, B.K. Iyengar, talks about how asana is so unique and different compared to gymnastics or bodybuilding or learning how to be a particular athlete. And it's because it's coupled with such mindfulness and attention to detail, and is also paired with the breath. So it's bringing into this deep concentration of the present moment. So we're not just moving through postures mindlessly. There's really specific ways to move the body. And obviously we have room for exploration, but it's really trying to draw the mind and body connection together into the present moment. And he's not saying gymnastics or these other movement modalities are wrong or negative, but that there's just this extra layer of drawing the practitioner deeper into themselves so that hopefully they might have that interest to explore these more esoteric practices and explore themselves on a different level than just the physical. It's like use the most tangible, which is like our vehicle, our body, to dive into ourselves.
Into the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're saying all that. In the original Guide to the 8 Limbs and Guide to Enlightenment, the Yoga Sutras, they only talk about asana, the poses, 3 times. And the first mention of yoga asana is a statement of beginning the practice now. And it's basically now, in this moment, in this second, connecting to your breath and your body. This is where yoga lies. This is where the ability that we all have within us to connect and find freedom and bliss and happiness and love is right here, right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's why people keep coming back. There is a student in our training program who started practicing like 2 months ago, and then just became so drawn to it that he signed up for teacher training. And it wasn't anyone telling him to do it. He just felt the draw and the desire to learn more and to explore his body and that deep interest of what is this all about? What does this mean? And I get messages from him or other students that are like, being on my mat is my most blissful time of my day. And I'm like, things like that are just that constant reminder of like, wow, even though it is really physical, even though people are sweating and breathing and working hard or stretching at points, like there is something magical happening underneath that, just pure physical. So if someone on the outside walked in and watched, it just looks physical, but we don't know what people are experiencing internally through their practice. And the poses themselves energetically are awakening the body in these lines of energy so that you're released. That energy in your body isn't contained in one part or stagnating in one area, but you're moving your body. You're doing lateral movements and twisting and extension and back bend and forward folding, almost like you are wringing out a sponge. I had this amazing analogy in a children's training I took, and this woman had this tub of water. And then she had like food dye. And she was like, okay, in life we have experiences like stress or, we have family issues or job issues or, illness. And the dye was coloring the water. And then she was like, and then here you are as this little sponge. And she put the sponge in the water. And then the sponge is like absorbing all that stress and that like anxiety and just work and overload. And then she's like, what movements do we do in yoga? And we fold, we back bend. And she's like moving the sponge and releasing all that energy. And even though it sounds really cool, cheesy, it was such a beautiful, like a visualization of what's actually happening when we're practicing yoga. And, people come into like Shavasana and have these deep releases, emotional releases or realizations. And they can leave the practice with, being able to let go of something or have fresh insight. And to me, that's like, wow, the asana is just the avenue for all of this extra work to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So another mention of asana in the Yoga Sutras is finding balance between effort and ease. Mm-hmm. And I think while all the teachers in the Black Swan mission is to allow this space, this community space to create this expansiveness for people to teach from their hearts and for students to trust their own hearts and trust their own bodies and practice what feels good to them. But I like this visual or symbol of finding infinity within the finite. Mm-hmm. So if you think about your yoga practice, you have a yoga mat, and your yoga mat is a prop to give you cushion, support, and grippiness so your hands don't slip everywhere. But it also gives you a guideline. It gives you a guideline of where your body is in space, and it keeps you on this island, essentially. And sometimes I've thought about it and I'm like, this is so weird. I'm like, and I just go out into the lawn, like into the grass, and practice without a mat so I have freedom. And I've done that a couple times where I go out into the grass and I close my eyes and I do my practice. And the place that I start is not the place that I am in a few minutes. Or if you ever practice yoga on the beach, it's just kind of hilarious how much you actually move. So anyways, and that's beautiful in and of itself. But if you're in a public setting where you have a million other people and, that analogy of life, we're always having to work and communicate and give and take with other humans, because that's all life is, connecting with other people in our community. The same kind of thing is happening in a yoga classroom where we all have our yoga mats and we have the ability to explore our minds and bodies infinitely, but we have this safe space. We have this container of that infinity. We have this finite area on our yoga mats where we can explore our bodies. And it gives us a feedback loop of reminding us, you're here right now. And you don't have to move all around and change and adjust and make everything perfect to be here right now and find that bliss. But instead, you can just stop exactly where you are right now, take a deep breath, and just realize, I have the power. I have the power to feel blissful, to welcome light into my heart, to connect with myself, to connect with others. So this Yoga Sutra, this thread of wisdom, is saying that we need to find a balance between effort and ease. And I think that's another reason why I love our style of yoga, is that we are encouraging people to find their strength. And we're offering practices that strengthen the body and allow people to develop their ability to balance and get the reins on their body so that they can guide it and live without pain, low back pain, neck pain, strengthen the muscles in the body around the skeleton as a support. And that's why I love our style of yoga, because we're encouraging people, we're creating a space for them to know and tap into their empowerment and strength. So they're practicing that effort where it's not easy, right? On the physical level and also the emotional level, practicing yoga isn't an easy thing. And I think it's really neat why there's so many warrior poses in the practice, because you have to take on this mentality of warriorness and strength to continue on your journey to get to the place of ease and peace and softness, where you can just lay in Shavasana totally still, no effort, and then the bliss comes to you.
Yeah.
Whee! Oh, I want to practice now.
I know. I'm just getting really
stop this
eager.
podcast for a quick intermission. Patience,
and
ease
I
right
think
now.
about like that stability and ease. We definitely are building strength in the body, but then we're also doing these counter poses to make the body feel mobile and agile and being able to move and kind of groove. So we're not just like, moving like a statue through our practice. There is fluidity within it, and we are trying to balance the body from the feet to the crown to the front body to the back body and everywhere in between. And so we can continue to move that energy. And something you're talking about, these warrior poses, like really embodying being a warrior for yourself, and which is so interesting because it seems very like opposite of what yoga is. Like people are like, oh, yogis, super chill, super zen. But there is this idea of learning how to be a warrior for yourself and following your truth, and not, doing life just because someone tells you to. But on your mat, it's like you are literally meeting yourself where you're at through these postures. And something else that really resonates with me in Light on Yoga is Iyengar talks about how there's such a vast array of postures that come from the lowliest creature of like a locust or a cobra, all the way up into these great sages and warriors and trees, and there's vegetation and quadrupeds like a dog and sphinx and these mythological creatures and crane pose or crow pose, and everything in between. And he's speaking to the beauty that we're trying to connect to, that universality that lies within everything, that the universe is in that creature as it is in you and me. And it's in a way allowing us to have homage and respect for all living beings. And so there's this beautiful way to connect to the rest of creation. And then you tap into that energy and that power even more. And that we do that every time we're in our mat. We're not thinking, wow, this energy is moving through this snake as it is moving through me. But those are the extra layers that if you're like wanting more, it can bring that into like a whole nother level of like, wow, there's life all around me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow, it's so neat. I mean, even just the sun salutations, the whole message behind them, other than offering this beautifully balanced exercise for your body where you're strengthening and stretching all parts of your body, the intention behind it is to pay homage and to surrender and bow and thank and offer gratitude to the sun, to life, to existence, the fact that you can move your body, the fact that you can breathe, that you have this light coming towards you and within you. It's all around you. And traditionally, in the vinyasa system, you begin with sun salutations. You create that inner heat for yourself, that of the sun, and you begin your practice on a note of gratitude and worship and reverence and respect and love. And just like Yama, the first limb of yoga, starts with the seeds in the mind of love and freedom and trust. The same thing applies here with the sun salutations and the physical aspect, that we are setting ourselves up for an awesome practice to experience all of the universe and in which we know it, the world, different types of creatures, vegetation. God, it's so cool. And it's all just uniting together.
Yeah. Oh man. And there's, we think about the postures themselves and, in the beginning it can seem like daunting, taking a practice. And there's a lot, like for someone who's coming in for the first time, overwhelming of like, what am I doing? When am I breathing left and right? And where are they going? And what language are they speaking? Are they speaking English? Is this, what is, the Sanskrit names of postures? But it's a journey and it just takes time to connect with your body in this way. And it's a new way of moving that people may have never explored before. And so as a teacher, it's really important to allow the student to have the time and to not be overbearing of this is exactly how you need to do it. And this is the only way. Because the way we teach at Black Swan is that there isn't just one way to move. And that there is that autonomy and agency of like, well, maybe I'm feeling a little stiff and I need to flip my palms and open my shoulders instead of having my arms facing down in Warrior Two. And that takes over time. But then I think about like, okay, that's why asana, but you were saying in the beginning, like people being intrigued by like advanced asana. And it's like, well, then why do we do advanced asana? Like, what's the point of it? What does it do?
It depends. It depends what your intention is, I think. Your intention behind doing it. It's a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
I think advanced asana, advanced poses like arm balances, inversions, deep back bends, the splits, anything where you're asking your body to do a lot. I think it does a few things. I think on your journey through the physical practice, you are kind of in a video game. You're leveling up always. And once you have mastered level 1, you can then go to level 2 and so on and so forth. And I think the neat thing about advanced asana is it can present new challenges to you of requiring you to maintain your integrity with the yamas and niyamas, the nonviolence specifically towards your body when you're asking it to do a lot in strength or flexibility. I think it's kind of requiring you to level up and expand into this new consciousness of even more love and respect for your vehicle, your body, when you are in your mind dreaming or lusting after an advanced pose. And then you try to practice it in your body. If your body isn't ready for it, that's the lesson of contentment, of presence, of still loving your body, even if you can't achieve this pose you have in your mind.
Yeah.
And it's, that's easier said than done. I think myself included, I've gone through bouts in my journey and my practice where I lost sight of that and was just having so much fun with the physical aspect that I was maybe one-tracked mind in advancing the poses. And then you learn lessons along the way. And then you open up to new philosophies of, okay, I injured myself here. Okay, that's a great lesson for more compassion and patience and taking my time. And it kind of brings you back to level 1. Like in a video game, you go to levels and then you die and you go back to level 1. It's kind of the same thing. That's funny. Like for me,
start over.
Yeah, you just go back to the foundation.
The basics,
Back to the basics. Advanced asana, it's so interesting. I think there's definitely a fine line of balance between finding contentment in your physical body and practice while also wanting to improve and grow. I think each person is going to be different. And I think a handstand is going to either challenge or serve all of us differently.
That's the way to enlightenment. It is. I'm just kidding.
What's a handstand? Oh my God. I'm like, what? It's in your fingertips connecting with the earth. Yeah. But it all, and I think too, we have to remember that even though we're in the present moment, we still have to realize that things change over time. Who you were 5 years ago and who you're going to be in 5 years could be very different emotionally, but also physically. And I think that's the big reason why we take the approach to asana that each individual's body is the real teacher. Each student is the teacher. They just have to realize they have that teacher within, that little voice inside that's saying, hey, you're going too far in a pose, come out. Or, come on, do a little bit more. You can do this. Grow. You've got this. Challenge yourself. And I think each person has to find that inner teacher, that inner voice, that inner intuition, and really stoke the flame of it. But I think even though we're trying to be in the present moment, we can still balance that by being humans on planet Earth and realizing if I want to live a long, healthy life with minimal pain and suffering, I need to take care of my body. I need to prepare for the future by eating well, exercising well, moving, being positive, and it's not all just about being in the present moment right now. You have to think about the entire picture before, your past, your present right now, and your future.
And how it affects you. Yeah, so I come from this lineage of yoga that is really dogmatic, and but I'm very grateful for my time with it. It has inspired me in a lot of different ways. And we both were in this place where we would wake up and practice at like 6 a.m. And my practice would like take about 2 hours. It was really long, and it was very much like one-on-one with teacher. And there was this point in my practice where I was progressing to level 2, level 3 in the video game of asana. And some of the postures were having me like put my legs behind my head, like one leg, and then both legs behind my head. And, there was definitely like an ego thing of like, wow, that's really cool. I'm so impressed with myself. And like, teacher, look at me, like I'm doing it. And then, during this time, I was also in more and more trainings and anatomy trainings. And like what you were talking about is like, how does the way you're practicing impact your body, not just in that present moment, but afterwards. And I started dealing with some minor, not intense, but minor sacrum discomfort in my low back. And I was like, oh, this is so weird. This is so bizarre. And I just had a teacher tell me one time, he was like, well, why are you doing that? He was like, what do you, And I was like, oh, I think it's because of putting my legs behind my head. And he was like, well, why? What's the point of it? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what the point was. I was just doing it just because I was told to do it. And then I was experiencing this like discomfort. And, yoga is meant to make us feel good and balanced. And he was like, well, when else do you really need to be like doing that? Like, how often do you need to have your hips that open? And so it was a really like humbling time in my life because I was so attached to this practice, which is really fascinating because yoga is also about non-attachment. And I was finding myself super attached. There'd be like mornings, my alarm clock wouldn't go off. And I'd wake up late and be like, no, I'm missing practice. I have to drive there and speed down to the I-35 to get to practice. Anyways, through being, having that information of anatomy and what I'm doing in my body and realizing, hey, I want this to be a longevity. I want to be able to do practice. I want to be doing this until I'm as long as I can. I stopped. And lo and behold, the pain, the discomfort went away. And I lost my attachment to what I was doing and decided to be a little bit more adaptive to what serves me best. And that's the hard part, is only you know how it impacts you. And that's where a lot of the idea of Satya, what we talked about, of being honest with yourself, how does it really make me feel? In the moment, you could be like, I feel great, but then a day later or 2 days later, you're like, I feel a little crampy. That's the part of just having that inner introspection of what's going on in my body and why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I trying to prove? Am I trying to prove something? And kind of toning it down and being okay with going back to the basics, because in the basics, there's so many little nuggets of wisdom and just oh, wow, this actually feels so good. And we don't always need to overcomplicate and add on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking so many things. I'm thinking a couple amazing one-liners that some of our teachers have dropped to us. Boom. One of them was that your poses, they don't have to be intense to have a magnificent, infinite effect. Since we're sensory beings, I think when it comes to the physical practice, we kind of train ourselves to chase after sensation and the feeling. So if you practice regularly and practice for a while and you practice the same poses on repeat, the way they feel in your body is going to change over time. And my experience is that in the beginning, you feel a lot. And sometimes it's not so comfortable and it can be really intense. And either by strengthening or by stretching, it can feel a lot. Your sensation is very high. And then slowly over time, you kind of train yourself to get into your breath rhythm and calm your mind and face the physical discomforts with this mentality of ease. And by doing so, you find more ease and you find more peace, which is great. But it doesn't feel as intense. And I think one of the ways in which it's a little bit of a slippery slope in which we can kind of set ourselves up for more risk of injury, not always the case, but sometimes, is when we think our sensation caliber always has to be on max volume. And I think we have to realize that we're constantly changing. The physical body and the mind is constantly changing, and we have to be open to that. And over time, a downward dog or a pigeon pose after years of practice may not give you an intense physical sensation. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's okay to maintain the range of motion and the strength you've developed and explore in new areas without going too far.
Yeah, definitely.
And another thing I think, too, like you said a moment ago, getting back to the foundation and the basics can be so powerful because we always can improve and always grow, and we can always strengthen our bodies a bit more for more health and more support. So getting back to the foundations, the foundational poses can be advanced in nature. And another one of our teachers said that if you ever have a yoga injury, if you ever have pain or discomfort, you should go back to the sun salutations and maybe take a video of yourself or have someone look at your alignment, one of your teachers or your friends, and ask them to observe your alignment and ask them to tell you if they notice anything. If you're taking a video of yourself, it'll probably be pretty clear. If you're having wrist pain, you film yourself doing a sun salutation or a vinyasa, then you can see with your own eyes, oh, okay, that's how I'm putting my hands on my wrists. Okay, that makes total sense as to why that hurts. Or my low back doesn't feel very good in plank and vinyasa and up dog or cobra. you take a video of yourself and you're able to see it, you're like, oh, okay, I've got it. It's kind of self-enlightening, if you will. So if you ever have, that's a great little trick that I definitely always use. If you ever have pain, discomfort, or an injury, video yourself doing some sun salutations, and the answer lies within. Oh my gosh. So the last little part of the Yoga Sutras, the last mention of asana, talks about how to master yoga poses.
And?
Yeah, what's the freaking secret? So the Yoga Sutras tell you that to master a pose, you have to be able to breathe, have ease in your body, and meditate on the infinite. So to me, what that really means is we have to keep the prana flowing. We have to keep our breath flowing. We can't be holding our breath or in such an intense pose that we want our fists, hands turn into fists and our whole body clenches up and we have a hard time breathing. We're trying to resist and stagnate the energy. So we have to welcome that sense of flow and ease into our bodies, the sweetness into the body to master a pose. And then setting your mindset up in the right way is really, really key. Meditating on the infinite. Focusing on yourself and all the different ways in which you are changing every day in your mind and your body, just trying to be in the present moment, either listening to a teacher teaching you a class, or if you're practicing on your own, just be becoming very curious about your breath and the way your body feels and the way your emotions are, your heart, and just constantly allowing yourself to grow and adapt and change and being present through all of it. So back to that idea of infinity within the finite, to master the pose, you have to be able to see the beauty in the mundane. And even if you're practicing something like Ashtanga, where it's a set sequence, or Bikram, or you're practicing a vinyasa class where it's flowy and dancey and so fun and very different every time, you still have some repetition. You still have the ritual of practice, the ritual of coming back to your breath and moving your body and trying to become more self-loving and self-aware. So within that finite, that ritual, that repeated action that you take, there is so much magic and so much beauty and so many lessons always that can be offered to you. So truly, you have access to infinity. And once you realize that and open up to it, you've become a master yogi.
No matter what the postures that you're taking look like. And that's another part of when, the mastering is not found in the actual asanas. It's about the mindset that you have. And, I always encourage my students, offer crow pose. The half of the class will take it. Maybe some people won't, or they're struggling. Just reminding your self-worth is not found in the yoga pose. It's just an avenue to get there. And I think the whole practice of even just the asana is such a parallel to life. You're working hard towards something, you have a goal, you're focusing, you're striving to get there. And then hopefully that's can be applied to how we move through life. You have a goal, we use that idea of tapas and that heat and that discipline to move towards that direction, not just on our mats, but in life, whatever those goals look like. And the biggest parallel is that I think we neglect or forget to think about is how practice, the first thing you do in a yoga practice is you breathe in, is you inhale. And the last thing you do is you come to Shavasana and you exhale. And it's just the metaphor of life of the first thing we do when we come into the world is we breathe in. And the last thing we do when we depart from this physical body is we exhale. And I really think that underlying even the shapes that we explore is the idea of life in its infinite sense. And it's teaching us in a way to even prepare for death of this human experience. And we always end with Shavasana, which is corpse pose. And that this pose of integration of all the work that you did, allowing that energy to permeate through your being, to calm your nervous system back down and really settle into stillness and surrender, which are really the yamas and niyamas all together in Shavasana. And a lot of times we'll have students roll over into the fetal position and then come back to a seat. And the fetal position, that's like the place where we all came from. And then we move back into the seat. And I think the idea of, it's kind of going down a rabbit hole, but of reincarnation, and not the sense of like, oh, everything in life is being reincarnated in a religious sense, but even in just the metaphor of you start on your mat in one perspective or attitude or your shit that you're dealing with, and then you work it out on the mat, you sweat it out, you deal with it, and then you release into Shavasana and you let it go. And then you wake up and roll into the fetal position, into this like new being, literally, like your cells are refreshed. You have new oxygen flowing through your blood, hopefully a new fresh perspective. And it's this deep metaphor of we have the opportunity to be born again and again, over and over, every moment, every day. And that's what you're talking about, of living in the present moment, of bringing us back and bringing us back. And so the asana is important, but it is the avenue in which we can start realizing these deeper points.
One breath at a time.
Yeah.
That's a great segue into next episode about breath and pranayama, which we'll talk about next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So we have asana, and there's so many ways you can explore it. Be open when you practice asana. Remember the yamas and niyamas to practice self-love and non-attachment and freedom with a balance of tapas and discipline, and knowing that you have this ability to strengthen yourself and open yourself physically, mentally, to connect deeper with your world. Thanks for listening today. We'll be back soon. Namaste.
Namaste.